on New Year's Eve 2019, I played a really big festival. The next day I woke up and I couldn't hear anything.
I don't really usually do intros, but we just go straight in. But I guess I want to say thank you, Anna, for coming on to Therapy Podcast. Unfortunately, Helena can't be here today, but she might jump on at any moment. But yeah, it's such a privilege and a pleasure to have you on here, and you've been a dream guest of mine ever since I came up with this idea of doing the podcast. And you've been in my life in a way, like for so many, ever since I was like a 20-year-old child, like just like watching your career and like you just like completely thrive throughout it. And then I guess, was it 2017 when you first became a mother? Yeah. And like, I remember that iconic moment when you dropped like the bump pic before Coachella the next day. And I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? And I'm so excited to talk to you today. And thank you so much for being here. But yeah.
Oh, Sam, that's so lovely. I actually was thinking about it before we came on because I read something of yours that you posted about how your Sydney years when you were in Sydney, and I was in Sydney in those years as well, and like doing stuff. And I remember what I was doing at that time, and then you were saying what you were doing, and I was thinking, oh, I wonder if we crossed paths or ever met.
We actually did, and you will not.
Oh, I knew it.
You will not remember this, but I was like doing the door. I was like a door bitch for Oxford Art Factory, and you had this like big show on, and I think I went outside, and you were outside with your like posse, and I thought you guys were so cool, and I still do, but like I was like hi, and you were so lovely, like such a warm, loving, caring energy. And I was just like a stranger, and we chatted, and I can't remember what exactly we chatted about, but I just remember this feeling of like, damn, this woman is so cool.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. I would love to be a fly on the wall and like see the conversation play out. Like, wouldn't you just pay I'd pay $1,000.
I'd love to know what I was wearing as well.
Oh man, I would love to see our outfits.
I know,
it would be something special because that was a special time in fashion.
But yeah, I guess I want to know like how you are. Like, how are you doing lately? How is motherhood? How is work and just life in general? I think.
Oh man, life's all right. Like separating to motherhood. Motherhood is going well. I now have a 6-year-old who's about to turn 7.
Wow.
In August, and a 4.5-year-old. So it's been a wild ride. In that time, I mean, so much has happened. It's like I can't even imagine life before kids in a real way. We've gone through such a transformative kind of 4 years, especially since the pandemic. I feel like becoming a mother, like where I'm at now is looking back at the last 4 years and the last 6 years and kind of working out like how I got to be in the position I'm in. Like I'm back in Sydney now. I moved back in the pandemic because I had 2 little kids. One of them had just been born. He was premature. I had been really sick with him and had to have like an emergency early birth. Wow. So that all happened like Jan 2020. So he was in hospital in February 2020, and then like we all know what happened in March. So it was like this really crazy, and then since then I've just been like trying to get in a position where my family is happy and healthy and I can continue to work to some degree. And I feel like now we're in a pretty good place. Like there's ups and downs with it, but the kids are getting a little older. I feel like they're sort of 2 to 4.5 kind of growth period is really kind of turbulent and interesting and bright, and they're growing so much, but they also, you can't just leave and not worry that they're not going to know you're gone and all that kind of stuff. So it's changed a lot, and you know what it's like. You've got to sort of adapt and change every 6 months to the new stage that your kids are at.
Yeah.
So yeah, how I am right now is I feel like we're in a pretty good place. We just went on our first family holiday. That was semi-relaxing, like almost.
Where did you go?
We went to Noosa. We went and stayed with family in Noosa, and it was beautiful. And like the kids were happy, and I feel like we were able to have a good family holiday, and the kids be comfortable, and us to not be wrecked, and like still be comfortable too. So that feels really positive. And it's also just brilliant and exciting to see, like, my daughter going to school now. She's in year 1.
True. If she's turning 7, oh my God.
Yes. And that's just mind blowing, like to see her go out into her community and like make friends and start to be influenced by them, and to see what it brings out in her has been fascinating. So
what has it brought out in her? I want to know. Like what?
Oh, it's just wild. It's so wild to see her react to her environment and work out what her contributions are going to be and what defines her and what she likes and what she wants from other people and the friendship she looks for. And it's just made her grow up so much more. Like their brains just change, and you start to have different conversations. It's mind blowing. So yeah, that's really cool. And my son goes to school next year, which is crazy.
Oh my God, 2 kids in school. That's crazy.
2 kids in school. And then I'm off to the races as a school mom, soccer mom, like
I
holidays.
I remember seeing your post of you in the tuck shop.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Tuck shop mom.
Yeah, I love that post. It was incredible. Maybe we should talk about life before kids and how it's changed for you and your like career and like work and stuff, like after having kids. Like how did you go through that? And yeah, just tell me about it. If you can.
Well, before I had kids, so I'd moved to Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles, basing there and doing mostly American touring, a little bit of Europe, a little bit of Australia. I'd moved there in 2012. So I had like the 2010s, I started DJing like 2007 full time. So 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, I sort of was a bit of a Sydney an Australian local.
I remember.
You were there. You knew. We were just here having fun in little whatever, doing whatever we were doing. It was really fun. It was a really sweet time in Sydney too. So there was like a really beautiful culture here, and all my best friends were in nightlife, and we had a really, like, it was that sweet cosmic moment where you meet really lovely people and suddenly you're like, oh my God, like this is where I want to be and this is what I want to be doing and these people are so great. And I just felt like I'd really found a home here. And then playing festivals around Australia. But Australia, like, we've got 5 big capital cities. So after a while, you run out of shows to play and things to do. And I started to feel frustrated. So by like 2011, I decided to move to America. I'd started playing shows in America in 2009. So from 2009, I went over like 4 times, and I was booking shows on MySpace, basically just being like writing to all the DJs that I'd been playing shows with in Australia. So when the American DJs came or the UK DJs came to Australia, that we would either throw the party or I would be on a show with them, supporting them, or we'd be doing a festival tour together. So I made all these friends overseas and DJs throughout America that I'd had great experiences with in Australia. So I'd hit them up and be like, hey, I'm going to be in New York on this time, or I'm going to be going through LA. Like, is there any shows going on I can jump on? And I was like sleeping on couches.
That's so clever.
It was really fun too. Like, it just felt like the whole world was starting to open up for me. Like, and I didn't have to wait for anyone. Like, that was the cool thing about social media that like had never existed before. Like, we didn't have that before then. So it was just like, oh my gosh, like, I know some guys in Baltimore. I know they run a cool party. Like, I'll be in DC the night before. Why don't I see if there's a party going on in Baltimore? So, and I met all these amazing people that went on to be a part of my life when I eventually moved to America, and that most of them are still a part of my life now. There's this really nice kinship of people that started and were active in the scene around that time. That's really lovely, actually. They feel like my DJ kind of elders, or my DJ anchors. Like, I always think, like, if they like a post, I'm like, great. Like the OGs still kind of.
Can you tell us who they are?
There's this whole. They're so lovely. Like Jubilee's still the legend. You know, like Nick Catchdubs and A-Track and Dave Nada and Paul Devereaux and all these people that I met on message boards, and who else, like AC Slater, he's one of them, because they had Trouble and Bass with Star Eyes. Star Eyes is another one. Like, we just all go way back, and it's so beautiful now.
Big community of people.
Yeah, and from all over the world. Like, it was so cool to suddenly have this international community of friends that I would see all over the world, like Spank Rock and Pace Rock and Amanda Blank, and they were just so fun and such brilliant creators, and they just all blew my mind at the time, and it was just so nice to get to actually know them. So yeah, then I moved to America and just started like booking shows. I didn't have a booking agent. I didn't have a manager. It was all really like DIY. So it was all pretty hard from like 2012, 2013 started to be interesting. Some interesting things happened. I think I played Coachella in 2013. Randomly. Like, so some cool things started to happen. 2014 felt like things were really happening for me, but like I got really frustrated because like the industry hadn't noticed, and I was like, 2015 everything kind of clicked into place. I got the Apple show and I got a good booking agent, and I got and I got a good manager, and like it felt like, okay, 2015, now we're working. And then 2016 and 17, so exciting. I remember before I fell pregnant when I was 20 in 2017, I'd gotten to that place where I wasn't insecure anymore. I felt like, okay, I know I can do this. I know I'm good at this, which I hadn't felt that way. Like, even though you see me in my 20s in Sydney and you thought, oh, she's cool, like she knows what she does. I was a mess, you know, like I was so insecure.
What?
I didn't feel like I'd proven myself. I felt like I was always, like, don't forget, at that time I was the only girl on a lot of those lineups. Like, there was a lot of me to prove myself over and over again to that scene, and like just constantly, you know. And then moving to America to do it all over again, prove myself all over again. I kind of like the challenge, but sometimes you don't feel good and you have to fake it.
And it must have been so exhausting.
Yeah, I remember by like 2014 I really was quite exhausted. But then when the momentum started picking up of 2015 and all this fun stuff, it was a cool time. It was like that Jack U, Skrillex, Diplo, like crazy tour that I did, and we were touring through Canada, and I don't know, all these crazy things happened that were really fun and interesting, and being involved in all that was cool at the time. And then 2016, 2017 felt good. And then so coming into parenthood, I felt like I'd finally gotten to where I wanted to be, and I was ready to blow it all up and have children and just roll the dice. Yeah.
Tell me about this. Like, did you feel like you were rolling the dice? Were you like, oh my God, am I I
was like, what am I
all these
doing?
steps backwards? Or like, what?
Well, I already, like, at that point I'm in my early 30s, and like I felt like, you know what it feels like to be a woman in the biz, where it's like, I don't know what happens to you as you get older. Like, does everyone turn on you? Like, you've seen all this cultural rhetoric around getting older and older women and what it means to be like not 21 anymore. So, and we came from Australia where it's even younger. Like, when I moved to America, I felt young again because everyone's a little older in the clubs. So I'd always had this element of like, do people just not want to see you do that? Of course, I'm just spilling it. Like, I just have to work through these little cultural blockades as I reach them and just like bust through them. So busting through the parenthood one was like, do people want to see mums DJ? And it was when I uploaded that photo that you talk about before where I was heavily pregnant. Well, I wasn't even heavily. I thought I was heavily pregnant, and the bump is like, beep. Nothing. I look like I had a big dinner. But anyway, doing that, I thought like my hands were shaking. Like, I really,
oh my God,
I was absolutely shitting myself. I did not know how people were going to react. I hadn't seen anyone so public do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't remember. I think Annie Mac had kids way before me. I don't remember her announcement. I don't remember like, I wasn't close to her, so I have no idea how it impacted her. But she was one of the only people more public than me that had had kids that I knew. One of my friends in Sydney, I don't know if you remember Gabby, but Gabby used to play around Sydney a bit, and she'd had Calypso a year earlier. So I called Gabby and mostly asked about how I would feel DJing pregnant and what I should book. But I hadn't really thought about the announcement and like what people were going to say. So that was so frightening, and I was quite overwhelmed with the response. Like, my phone really blew up. I did announce the day before I played Coachella as well. So it was like, I really threw myself in. But do you know what's weird about it? I actually had an epiphany on New Year's Day, 2017, that I would be pregnant playing Coachella.
What?
I had an epiphany.
Whoa,
yeah.
like a vision.
Yeah, and I'd actually fallen pregnant like probably that week, but I didn't know. And I wasn't trying to fall pregnant. Oh, yeah, we were actively like, let's not, take precautions anymore. Yeah. But I had a premonition that I would be pregnant at Coachella. And I actually said to my husband, I was like, it's really weird because I had this weird daydream that I would be pregnant at Coachella. But I thought because it was only in 3 months at that time that like, well, that's not going to happen. Little did I know I was already pregnant.
Your body knew.
My body knew and had like told me. And I actually, the first time I booked Coachella in 2013, I'd had a dream that I played Coachella that year too. So like, I'd tweeted it. I just had a dream that I played Coachella and then I booked it.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, this just happened. So I seem to have this inner like
a witch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like a good witch.
A Coachella witch.
You're Coachella.
It's only my skill set is my intuition is only about what's going to happen at Coachella. So very niche.
Very specific.
Yeah. I mean, it's so nice to see people like yourself like smashing it and also raising 2 children, which is, I don't know if you've discussed this already, but I'm someone who, even though I've literally just had my first baby, I'm already thinking about number 2 and thinking about what that might look like and when to do it. So I guess my first question to you would be, did you plan to have 2? What were the decisions? What were the questions? And how is it now?
Oh my gosh. Now, this is a really big topic. I don't think I've talked really about, I think if anyone knows my journey, they probably know me a lot for being publicly pregnant and playing, but I've been pretty quiet when it comes to motherhood and like the realities of what it entails, mostly because I really feel really humbled by it, and I'm learning all the time about what it means. And I've not felt like so ready to kind of like talk about how I do it and what's working, and because it's always changing, right? Having to and it's also, you're not sure what's so relevant just to your situation and what's universally relevant or what other people might experience, what's so particular to your kids and why things are hard or why things are not hard. So I've been really hesitant to, or unsure how to really talk about having to.
Yeah.
Going from 1 to 2 was another thing that's really complicated about my story, or difficult to summarize how I feel, is, as I was telling Sam before you jumped on, I had my second baby on the back foot in a really big way, where I'd fallen pregnant fairly unexpectedly, kind of earlier than we thought we would, but it happened and it was good. We definitely like thought we wanted more and weren't like against that idea. But I had a really tough pregnancy. So I toured still, and I had a young one who was at daycare bringing home all those germs. And by like 5 or 6 months, I got a cold or a virus that just wouldn't go away. So and on top of that, I have like, I had a quite serious pregnancy condition called cholestasis, which is, it's basically a liver condition where your body gets overwhelmed with pregnancy and the liver doesn't handle it and starts to secrete all the enzymes into your bloodstream, which can get to the baby. So it can be really dangerous. I found out I had it with my first child at like 33 weeks, like 4 days before I played Hardfest. So
Wow.
I had a great pregnancy. I had felt like physically, like my muscles, you know, people get like sore hips, sore back. I hadn't gotten any of that. I was physically really strong, playing really big shows, heavily pregnant, jumping all over the place. I felt great.
Yeah.
But then I went to the doctor and I'd had a dinner party the night before, actually with Liz de la Pedra, who I know Sam knows. Love Liz. So she'd come to my house in LA. I'd cooked this great like Arabic chicken with like za'atar and all this great stuff. It was really good. And I say that because like diet is relevant to what it is, which is basically my liver ate this dinner and then like my hands, she left and I took my shoes off. My hands were so itchy and I was just like, oh my gosh. And and I took my socks off. It was the middle of summer and I was itching my feet and I was like, oh my God. You know, when you're itching a scratch and it's the wildest itch feeling ever and you're like, whoa, like the sensations were crazy. So I mentioned it to the doctor the next day. I was like, oh, it's so weird. Like my skin was so itchy last night. Like I couldn't stop itching it. And she was like, okay, that's enough for me to diagnose you with cholestasis. And I thought, because I thought it was just like, oh, my skin's stretched, so I'm itching. I don't know. But she's like, that's actually all I need for an official diagnosis of liver cholestasis. And I was just like, what? She's like, yeah, we need to get the baby out like in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I was just like, what? Completely blindsided by that. So that really took a turn on that first pregnancy where it was like, whoa, okay. And I'm looking into what this means, basically trying to eat like non-liver stressing foods, trying to like keep my body, like then I had to get monitored like every 3 days. I had to go into the hospital and have a blood test without any food in my stomach and lie there for an hour while they scanned the baby's heartbeat. But there was all these annoying things to do with it where like even though they took the blood test, because they basically want to see if there's a spike in your blood, so if your liver's getting stressed, but they don't get the results back for 11 days. So when you get a blood, so for 11 days, every time you get a blood test, by the time you get the results, you're like, well, if something was wrong, like, the baby
it could
just
be
like
completely different now.
So it was really stressful. And I had my last show like 3 days after that. That was Hardfest. Yeah,
that was Hardfest. Did you say?
Denied whether I did it, and like I'd been DJing like the whole time, and I felt great. So I felt like actually maybe it'll be good to concentrate on this and just. I'm okay. So I played it. It was great. It was fine. And then I had like a very, here's the clincher. You get itchy. So the bile in your bloodstream makes your skin itch. It's awful. So like, don't sleep.
Horrible.
I just itched and was insomniac for like 3 weeks and then had a
and that's before you're having your baby.
So then I had the C-section with her, like a scheduled C-section, because I actually had placenta previa as well. I'm not sure if you do birth stories here, if I'm oversharing, but
no, please.
We love this.
This is the tea. This is the real. This is what really.
Yeah.
So exactly. I had that complication with the first child, and once you have that, you know you're going to have it for the next child. It doesn't go away, and they say that every child it gets earlier. So I knew I was going to have this complication towards the end of the pregnancy. I had done like everything I could do before that to cleanse my liver. I'd seen naturopaths. I'd been taking nettle tonic like constantly. Like I'd tried very hard to improve the health of my liver so that maybe it was better the second time around. But the second time round, as I said, I've got this little kid in daycare. She's bringing home germs. I start getting sick. And, I'd also started going a bit vegetarian in between because after I had children and started breastfeeding, I couldn't stand the thought of milk or cheese. Like it made me really sad for the cow. I just couldn't do it. So then I was like, okay, I've got to be vegetarian.
Being a human cow,
you know what it feels like you're getting pumped. You know what that feels like. So then I was like, I can't put a cow through this. And then I was like trying to get off meat and I was just like, you know, parenthood changes everything. So then I had just probably was lower in iron as well. And I just got slammed by this pregnancy where if it wasn't a cold, it was a stomach bug. If it wasn't a stomach bug, it was conjunctivitis. If it wasn't hand, foot and mouth disease, it was whatever else. So like,
God, no.
it was just a joke.
Oh
so this started in like August 2019. And the touring was really great. Like I actually loved touring pregnant because it was the one thing that made me feel like me the whole time. I don't know, not all people feel like that. Some people found it hard. Like I genuinely found it really, really rewarding and like actually kept me centered and focused on something. But so when did I have him? I had him in January. By December, I'd lost a lot of weight. The cholestasis had started. I was trying to eat really clean so that I didn't get the cholestasis, but I got the cholestasis and my body was just sort of, I was getting thin. Like I was really thin. If you see, I can send you guys photos of it, but like I was frighteningly thin. The baby was big and healthy, but I was kind of like, it was sucking everything out of me.
The stress as well, I'm sure, was also affecting your body.
It really was. And on New Year's Eve 2019, I played a really big festival the night before New Year's Eve, and then I had another private event on New Year's Eve. And after the big festival, I still had all these congestions, like just a cough that wouldn't go away or like whatever. And I had this cough that wouldn't go away, and I played the gig. I felt great playing back to back with a friend, so it wasn't heavy lifting. It was a really big festival. It was like 15,000 people or more, the Audiotistic Festival. But like I felt good, and I was playing back to back with like one of my oldest friends from Sydney. It was Wax Motif. He's the guy that I've been playing with forever. So it was like there's this great photo where I'm like standing there heavily pregnant. We're in front of all these people and he's tying up my shoelaces because they'd come undone and I couldn't reach them. Like it was fine. And all my friends were there. Like AC Slater was there, who I talked about before, Sam, who I've known for 15 years. So I felt like I was amongst friends and chill. But the next day I woke up and I couldn't hear anything. Like my ears had blocked, which I found out, which is like sort of a pregnancy symptom when you have so much extra blood in your body that it can overwhelm the tiny little tubes in your ears. So it's actually really common. Like when I went to the ENT the next day, he was like, look, this happens a lot to pregnant women that are sick. You're probably not going to be able to hear till the baby comes out. And I was like, what? So this
How do I work?
Well, exactly. So I at the time was like, but I was also in a lot of pain because the pressure started building. So I couldn't speak. If I spoke, my words would bounce around my head like I was being my ears were blocked. It was actually terrifying.
Yeah.
It was terrifying.
It's actually so crazy how many of these symptoms that we just have no idea happen when you're pregnant. Like there's so many things like this, which how would you know?
No, I know,
crazy stuff. Wake up not hearing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I had a friend that when she was pregnant, she couldn't swallow, like she just kept dribbling. Like no one told her she was going to have a dribbling problem. Like what? Like give us a break. We're busy.
Give us a break.
Like we've got enough going on. Like don't make me dribble. So I just think like there's all kinds of surprises that can happen in pregnancy. So I also am cautious that like I don't want to scare women that are pregnant. So maybe I don't know if you want to like tone down my story or like
no, not at all. I feel like I think it's important to kind of share these stories because I know when I was pregnant, I actually found a lot of solace in hearing all the information, and I wanted to know the realities of pregnancy because I think sometimes it can be, you know, sugar coated and kind of the lovely glowy side, and it's like that's not what it's like all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
and to say that like there was also, as I said, like not to be like it was the worst thing. It wasn't. Like I still had this big healthy like ability to work the whole time. Like all this great stuff had been happening too. So it wasn't like it was all terrible. I'm just cautious not to overwhelm people. Yeah. And also one of the best pieces of advice that I got, which I like to say to my friends who are pregnant, which is like there's a way they make it so that you'll do anything to get the baby out, basically. Like the powers that be will put you in a position where you're like, this baby's got to come out, right? So that's sort of how I see all these things now. I'm just like, okay, the baby just had to come out. It was like we got to that point. So for a month I had very limited hearing, maybe like 70% hearing, and I couldn't. It got really stressful because I had the hearing loss, the cholestasis, and I also had a little toddler, so I couldn't even be around her because she couldn't, like, I couldn't talk to her. I basically she would come visit me and we had a spare bedroom, so I'd just be like quarantined off to the spare bedroom, and she would just come in and check on me every now and then, and my husband would have to cook all the meals for me and come in, bless his heart, and take care of the baby all the time. And it was just pretty scary for all of us because I was getting thinner and thinner, and it was just like it wasn't so cool.
That's really
and
hard.
This was in LA, right? So
This
you
was
were
in
away
LA.
from all of your family.
Yeah, and they were worried.
Does your husband have family in LA? Or
No, he's Australian too. So
so it's just you guys.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and our friends were like doing what they could and like dropping around some food, if I remember right. And but yeah, just all that to say that when I had him by emergency C-section in like the end of Jan, I was already on such a back foot. And the reason I told that part of the story is because it's so hard to know what it's like going from one child to two children under normal conditions. Because what happened once I had him was that he was in the NICU for a month, which was frightening and like, full on. And then the pandemic started at the beginning of March. So then
oh my God.
we were locked in the house, just the four of us, for 6 months. Like we didn't have any.
How did you survive that? Like what was like getting you through each day? Like that sounds so stressful.
I felt really, it was really hard, but I also felt really like we were all really scared in that time. But I felt fortunate in a lot of ways because I had my family all in my house with me. When I had the baby, my parents came over. So they were there at the beginning of the pandemic. And like I had the first few weeks of the pandemic, it was just like my mum and dad, Mark and the kids, and like we cooked all day and we just sort of
You had your bubble.
Had a bubble, and then they left, and that was scary. Like when I said goodbye to my parents was really scary because we also didn't know, like, do we die if we get this thing? So a big part of me was like saying goodbye to them. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to see them again. Like I remember watching them drive away, and I was like, oh my God, like these are the heavy thoughts that you had in that time and you didn't give them too much mind. So like I went inside and cried, but in my head, I'm like, I'm going to see them again. You're just like, how is this? Where are we at right now? This is a crazy time. So that's why it's hard for me to talk about what it was like going from 1 to 2 without the context of how it happened.
Yes.
Because in that time then from like that 6 months after that, basically like we had already scheduled that I would be playing my first show back would be EDC, had a great set time. It would be this big moment. So that was in May 2020. Of course, none of that happened. So it just meant that like my career was in a new kind of floating stage, which everyone's was. But then I sort of had to go back to Sydney. Like by the middle of the year, I was just like, I just want to be at home with my family. This is too much. And so without really thinking about anything else, we just went home and just left, like basically just walked away from LA. And it was really overwhelming and hard. And like, I read this thing that was like talking about life change moments. Having a child is like a massive life disruption. There's like disruptive moments. And it was like having a child is a disruptive moment. Moving jobs is a destructive moment. Moving countries is a destructive moment. And there was something else, like health or something. And I had like 4 or 5 of them at the same time.
All in one.
Like I was just like,
oh God.
So yeah.
And also your postpartum as well. So,
like postpartum, like recovering from an insane physical response to a birth as well. So just, I don't even know. I don't feel that I can adequately give advice or share how I feel about going from 1 to 2 in any way that doesn't involve that story. But I can say that having 2 kids is really cute, that you see them playing together and they have a relationship. They also fight so much, so much, so much. It's really
What's
funny.
the age difference?
2.5 years.
Okay.
When I found out I was having a boy, my mom's like, oh She's like, Kirsten and Michael ruined my life. They fought so much. And I was like, oh, no, like, we'll be fine. Like, we'll be fine. They do fight a lot. It's full on. But, yeah, we have endless, like, it's endless entertainment with those two. They're real characters and they're really, like, you just wouldn't change them for anything really. So, it's a lot of fun. And now that they're getting older and we're hitting that, they say that when your youngest is 7, it's like everything clicks in because you can really do everything.
Okay.
So we've got one coming up to 7 and one at 4.5. So we're functional. We can do stuff. There's still some fighting, but it's a lot of fun and never a dull moment.
Oh my God, I just saw the baby just stirred. I'm like, stay down, stay asleep.
Oh,
Got the camera here.
Yeah, cute.
but yeah, what I wanted to ask you, because this is more like for my own self-interest, but like,
Please.
do you, like, when you go away, like, you know, because you go to America to tour, when you come back, are your kids like, fuck off, I don't want to see you? Because I remember Jams talking about this and I was like, oh, I don't get that. But now Jeannie is like, I don't want any, she's like, daddy, 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 I don't want anything to do with you, mummy. I don't want you, I want daddy. Like,
That's hard.
and I'm like, oh my God. Like, does that happen to you as well when you go away? Or like,
I haven't experienced that.
that's good.
No, I haven't. Because I listened to the podcast. I listened to that when Jams was saying that, and that no, that hasn't happened to me. Both the kids are usually just like really excited for me to come home, and yeah.
Wow.
But I've made my hot tip, if
Yes,
you can
please,
call it that,
please.
is I made a rule where it's like the week I leave, I get them ice cream like the night before I go away.
I have seen this on your Instagram, actually. I've implemented something similar.
Yes, something similar. Look, I'm not giving parenting advice to anyone, but I give
Please.
I'll be like, let's go out for ice cream the night before I go, and then the day that I come back, I take them out for ice cream again.
That's nice.
And that's just like, so they're just like, ice cream is home. Who doesn't like ice cream? Let's go.
Not mom, it's ice cream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get ice cream tonight. Great.
Actually, that kind of relates to something I was going to ask you about touring. Do you ever bring your children with you? I saw a picture, I'm not sure, one of your children with you at Coachella. I think it was your daughter with you.
Yeah.
Do you bring them along to a lot of things? Okay.
I do not. No, I don't. I'm in awe that Jams brings her kids out. I can't it doesn't mix. It hasn't mixed well for me. Not to say that I wouldn't. And now that like my daughter's been to maybe 2 shows, again, the pandemic happened and I travel for most of them. If there's a show in Sydney that is like a reasonable time, like a festival set or something like that, I take them. Or if there's a show like in LA, we took Willa to Coachella. But there's Coachella was really funny because on Sahara there's this, and all the stages there's this VIP section that like cuts through the middle of the crowd. Sam, you might remember that, but there's like the crowd's here and then there's this VIP section where everyone is, and I was playing earlier in the day, so like I could clearly see Mark and Willa there. Willa was 18 months, something like that, and she's got her little earmuffs on and she's ripping, like she's just running around the crowd. People are seeing her too and they're like, oh, there's her, and she's ripping off her headphones. So while I'm playing at Coachella, I'm like, put her headphones on, like yelling, like put her phones on. And I can see her just getting up to everything. I can see her like, she like went up to the security guard. She's funny. She went up to the security guard and she took his orange and like ran off, and he was like, oh, like and I saw her running through the crowd with an orange. I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I can't do both these things. This is just too full on. Like, it was pretty funny. It's funny having her there, but like, I'm fine to separate my 2 worlds. That's absolutely fine. Field Day in Sydney was hilarious. Like, she was on stage with me and with my husband, Mark, and Mark was holding her back because she was trying to run on stage. So this is when she was about 4. She was trying to run on stage and he was like grabbing her, and then she got so excited she was like rolling on the ground. I came off stage and she had her pigtails were like and she had like dirt all over her face, like stage smuck, like all over her face. I was like, what happened? It didn't help that she got into my rider before and was eating the chocolate and the chips. Like she just
I
had
love it.
like all the sugar and
Chaos.
then heard all this
Pure
crazy music.
chaos.
Like, so
Wow.
look,
Actually, I remember you telling me once I think we were chatting on Instagram, and you were like, because I think I was asking you a similar question, and you said that you use that time away as like your time to like, that's you time, and you like reset and recharge and like,
yeah,
and I was like, oh, I can't imagine. In my head, I was like, can't imagine feeling that. But now I'm doing the same thing, and I am like, oh my god,
I know.
I can deeply sleep. I mean, until 3 a.m. because I always wake up at 3 a.m. But yeah, the sleeping is so different. The like
That sounds
just
good.
going to like the hotel breakfast in the morning and being like, okay, I can just mindfully eat.
It's a holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a holiday.
Feels like that's exactly
It
right.
literally is.
Guys, I'm excited.
I know.
You're getting me hyper right now. I can't wait. Sleep.
It's a real clutch key, Helena. You want to be like alone in that hotel. Yeah, it's definitely like, well, it happened for me incidentally because I just didn't feel like I could, the way that I was touring, I made it so that everything was compressed. American touring is pretty rigorous at travel days. So it's like a 6-hour flight here, and then there's the next day you'll do 8 hours because you got to do connection through Denver, and then you got to go up to Atlanta. I mean, got to go up to DC, and then you got to go like 3 hours to Chicago, and then you got to fly all the way back home on Sunday or go via Vegas. So it's like the travel hours are so significant. I couldn't imagine traveling with another person and the baby just because of the way the schedule was. And I decided to I became a pumping maniac. Like, I know I won't give anyone parenting advice, but I will tell you, if anyone wants to know how to pump your little heart out and have the biggest, greatest collection of breast milk the world has ever seen, I know how to do that. I know how to travel through Asia with breast milk. I know how to travel to Europe with breast milk. I know how to store it. I know how to freeze it. I know how to get the hotel.
We need a whole episode on this.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I have a certain skill set and a certain knowledge base that's like, I will share that. But with anyone who'll ask, I actually quite like talking about it because it's like, when else can I talk about it? Yeah, so that was sort of like what I decided to do was to like leave the baby at home, have 3 days or 4. I always had like a 5-day storage of breast milk at home. So that I could go and the baby could stay at home, and between Mark and the nannies, like we would be able to do it. But the benefit of being back here is that we also have my family around.
Yeah.
So my mum, my sister, my brother, friends, that sort of thing.
Do you tour Europe often, or do you kind of try and keep it to a minimum for that reason?
It's one of those things where because I was from Australia and then had to rebuild in America and then started playing shows in Europe. Like I played Tomorrowland and like Mystery. I got offered Printworks in 2019. Like 2019 things I was sort of like I was dotting over there a fair bit. But then I moved back in 2020. So it was just sort of starting to happen in 2019. And now from Australia to sort of do the hard yards to rebuild, I can't. And that's what I will say about being in the position I'm in now, as opposed to the position I was in before kids, is that I'm not able to pivot in the same way that I used to. I'm not able to do the hard yards away from the family. And that's sort of the compromise, is like I have to be targeted, deliberate. And that's also the joy of it. I remembered this huge clarifying moment when I had Willa, where I realized I don't want to do any of that anymore. Like the clarity, like I don't have time for any of these things anymore. I will do all these things and I will love all these things and I will just not do any of that. And it was so clarifying. Like I felt focused and, busy and like laser. It's like the clarity that comes with with it. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. Like
I'm feeling that right now. Prior to having Zavi, I hated saying no to things. I really struggled with saying no, and I still don't like to if I can, but I I think I've gone, does that serve me now? Like
Mm.
before, I would do things that actually hindered my mental health, my physical health. And, you know, like we were saying before, if you do a show and it's really far away, or it's like, oh, we'll have to be back in 24 hours, your body can kind of recover from that. But now I physically cannot do that. So I'm just learning to say no and kind of accepting that my life looks a bit different. I guess that's all
Yeah.
I'm still on that journey though. It's very up in the air. I don't know who I am at the moment still.
Yeah. And
Oh man, it takes like, I feel the same way in a lot of ways too, honestly. And I feel like even before kids, I had a lot of meandering
Yeah.
headspaces. Like I would have periods where I felt really strong in the bag. Like I knew who I was. I knew what I was doing. I knew what music I was making. I knew what music I was playing. The crowd got it. I got it. And then I'd have like months where I was like, "Ooh, is this working? Are we connecting, or is this whole thing like making sense?" So I think that is normal to a certain degree to all experience, but definitely after children, it's just like, and also you've got less headspace to work it out, right? Because you're that much more busy. But at the same time, you also drop a lot of stuff worrying about a certain amount of it. Well, I found that I stopped worrying about a certain amount of that dialogue just because there wasn't any time to worry about it. So it was like, okay, if I can, here's something that I did actually, which worked really well when I had one kid. And that was every quarter I made a deal with Mark that like every quarter or third, like every 3 months of the year, we each got 2 nights off away from the kids. So we get each other 2 days away to like take a breath, go somewhere, sleep, walk, write, realign your goals, work out what you wanted out of the next 3 months. And that was really amazing for a time, like before the pandemic hit. Like that started in early 2019. We did that in 2019, and then 2020 we did not do that. But yeah, that worked really well because there's just so much noise in a house with children and so much need. You wake up and you're on, like it's kind of wild. Like if you really explain it to people, you're like, no, my kids wake me up at 6 and I don't stop until they get to bed at 8:30. And then like I might manage to keep my eyes open to watch half a show and then I'm falling asleep. Like
and then add in DJing
so
career that as well. It's
it's a lot.
Yeah.
And also like just finding the time to like connect with your partner as well. Like I find that really difficult because you're just so like, okay, we're kids. Oh, well, like kid for me, but just one. But
and Bieber, sorry.
Oh, of course. My baby Bieber. That's my dog. Yeah, so it's, and also, I mean, to a degree, like connecting with Bibba because she kind of gets so like lost in the sauce, and I'm like, oh, Bibba.
Bibba needs love too.
Yeah, we all need love.
Yeah, it's true. All those things. Oh man, it's a lot for sure. And like as your children get older, we joke about it all the time because like you'll go to talk and like they'll yell. Like when you start talking, they're like, "Ma, ma, ma, talk to me," and like we're just like looking at each other like, "What?" Like, are we going to get to have? We try to have this conversation like every time we start it. Then when they interject because they just want your attention so much, they just want you to like engage with them all the time. It's hilarious.
So do you and Mark still do the quarterly thing, like the 2 days away together?
We go in and out of it. We're trying to do it again. I took a little 3-day in January and he took one, I think, in March. So, yeah, we do try to do it still. It works because it's sort of like, yeah, you just need to fully relax your nervous system. Something that I experienced was an increase in anxiety after I had kids. I think I'd always had anxiety, but I think I was able to really feel it. And I think they say that that's really natural because you're given all these extra hormones to sort of protect the baby. But I found that those 2-day trips were very essential to calm my nervous system. like having time to deeply calm my nervous system and to feel centered. Sometimes I really need to do that now.
Yes.
So yeah,
Amazing. Well,
I feel like maybe other mothers or parents will feel like that they might relate to that, because I feel
100%.
like when you're around children, there's a certain stress, like
yeah.
a base level
Yeah.
of like adrenal energy that needs to sort of be there. And you just need to let that out for a second and be fully back to like self kind of complete.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And this is why I love going away now, like on the weekends for shows. I know it's still work and it's stressful sometimes, like, but you know, it's nowhere near as stressful as parenting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also
Totally.
I don't know. I love parenting, Jeannie, but you know, I'm also appreciating these times away, because when I come back home, I'm like, oh, it just makes me love it even more having that time away, because
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm not in that fight or flight all the time kind of thing.
And I think it's different, you know, from being out of the house for like a couple of hours, you know, and then coming home, because you know you're still like in parenting mode for the whole day. So I can imagine when you go away for a night, you know, you're like, no, this is my time from morning to evening, and I don't have to think about being a parent. So like you said, you can come back the next day or the next couple of days and be like totally refreshed and
just totally
present
like
as well.
reset.
Present, yeah. That sounds great.
If you guys are happy to end there, like I want to thank you, Anna.
Yeah.
It's honestly,
thank you, Helena.
It's been such a dream to have you on here, and yeah, so many like, I mean, I listened to your podcast, the Create Destroy one.
Destroy, yeah.
And throughout listening to that and like today, you're just so like full of wisdom, and like you have such humility, and like I don't know, there's something so beautiful about you, and it's been such a privilege to have you on here.
Oh, Sam, it's really, really beautiful to talk to you guys. I really appreciate those words. I feel like there's so many people that I've connected with in the last 4 years, like through the pandemic, and I'm just dying to have a really long lunch with you guys and just like actually be in the same space. And every time that's been, like even Jada, one of your past guests, we recently had like a really beautiful lunch in Sydney, and it was just so nice to actually like that's what I sort of don't have as much of that sort of interface with people being so isolated over here now, which I really miss, because like almost doing my podcast was my way of forcing a situation where I could be like face to face during the pandemic with my friends and people that I was inspired by. So it's really special to get this time together and have a sort of portal to discuss all these very real things. And we've been in touch since you had Jeannie. So cool to really have this conversation. There's so much more we could talk about too. I could have gone another hour.
Maybe we'll have to do a part 2.
But we'll do it in person.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully in Sydney. That'd be nice.
Yes. Yes.